Welcome to the Canny Conversations podcast. Once again, Saf and Adrian are in conversation with Professor Paul Cadman. This time they're talking about giving back and the importance of corporate responsibility. So let's join the conversation.
Hello and welcome again to a Canny Conversation with a cause. A conversation that we very much hope will captivate your curiosity cannily. And I'm Adrian Kibler, and with me, Safaraz Ali. Saf, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, Adrian. Good to see you again.
And what have you been doing with yourself for the last few hours?
Last few hours?
Yeah.
Twiddling my thumb, waiting for you.
Oh, well,
I was on time this time.
I'm sure it's time well spent. We've got the pleasure of the company with Professor Paul Cadman with us today. And we couldn't really have a better person than Paul, because we're going to talk about giving back. We're going to talk about doing the right thing, often known as corporate social responsibility. And a few people better to talk about that than Paul, who's had a long history, both individually and as a businessman, of giving back to the community. Paul's won many awards for his charitable work. In 2021, he led an initiative with art and business. And he's also worked with numerous charities, including St Basil's, which helps homeless young people, and the Acorns charity in Birmingham that helps to care for children with life-limiting illnesses and support their family. Safaraz likewise has been very heavily involved in giving back to his community through some charitable activities, including supporting a local football team and all sorts of other things as well. So, first of all, Paul, Saf, why do you give back?
Can I just add some value to the opening speech there as well? I'm a board member, trustee of Steps to Work, which is a charity that's given tens of thousands of people jobs, things like that, been going a number of years and things like that. I'm involved with BYSA, same as Safaraz, it's a local community. Employability UK, I'm a patron of Employability UK. Of course, St Basil's, I'm a board member and trustee of that. I'm the vice president of Acorns. There's 2 or 3 other organisations as well that's around giving and around doing the right thing. So there's different organisations for different things. So What's Up is particularly proud, which is World Against Single-Use Plastic. So that's my environmental credentials and things like that. We're going to be here all night if I carry on with this fan and that sort of thing. It's an absolute pleasure to be here, and thank you for recognising me for my charitable contributions, giving back to society. I always want to be known as the quiet change maker. Always want to sit in the background and never like the spotlight, the recognition and things like that. So today I may be squirming in occasions a little bit because I want to be kept out the light. But we'll see where it takes us today.
Saf, a bit about your charitable work. I mean, I know you support a football club for young people in an inner city area, and a whole host of other things as well. So, why?
I mean, most of my work is in the third sector, so voluntary and community organisations, social enterprise. So organisations are doing the right thing, but also at the same time, it's a business. It's a profit for purpose. We know the charity sector. There's also the third sector in terms of community organisations, voluntary organisations, and then you've got not-for-profit organisations, and then what the preferred term that we've got is profit for purpose type of organisations as well. And that's our thing. We're working in the sector in terms of health and social care ourselves, in terms of our business, employability, getting people back into employment, upskilling, reskilling individuals, and also in terms of the adoption of foster care side of things. So that's from a business perspective, but also from a profit for purpose perspective as well. So been doing that since sort of 1999, so 22, 23 years. My life started off really looking at that time. looking to add value to my CV. So I was very much careers driven, and I was thinking to myself, I want to broaden my experience, look at what else can I do. And one of the ways that careers advisors or mentors do say is consider volunteering. And I really got into the whole education sector at the time, and I thought, this is a bit more than just adding something onto my CV. This is really now a passion. And so that passion was gifted to me by chance because of the people that were there, the environment, the fact that I could make an impact, make a difference. And that's really led me on to getting involved wherever I can, particularly if you can make impact. And I know, it's a big thing at the moment in terms of CSR, corporate social responsibility. It's very competitive as well in terms of that particular market. And, we've got many more organizations getting involved, even the charitable sector. It's a very competitive market out there, and everybody's trying to grab your attention and differentiate ourselves. And really it depends on what works for you and where you think you can, where you can think you can make most impact.
Yeah, I mean, there are obviously thousands of good causes, local, national, international. So, Paul, how do you decide what you're going to support? Because with the best will in the world, you can't support everything. So, what's the criteria that you use?
I never say no. I always give. Anybody asks for help, I'll always give them help, whether it's advice, whether it's money, whether it's support, whether it's profile, or whether it's contacts that will lead them to where they want to be. Got a reputation for that, and I think to start my journey, it was around my parents. My parents would always look after people, support people, and things like that. Where we came from, families, friends would come round and things like that. They'd share food, and it was always that giving, sharing, helping nature that's kind of stayed with us through our life. Trying to choose what we do. So I always look at the strategic big plan. That you talk about feeding somebody today and to that, but you say give somebody a fishing rod, they can feed themselves, to this, to that. Give them the tools, they can be at the farm themselves. Don't know the exact terminologies. Far wiser people have laid facts down, but it's around. So I look to my legacy is going to be around changing destiny of people. So we talked about generational things. I want to train somebody today that reflects 2 or 3 generations, father, daughter, son, follows father, and so on and so on. Grandfather becomes the lead, grandmother becomes the lead, and generations change. So my strategic approach is around, getting rid of poverty and trying to change the world in a positive way. So we wrote some things around what we should do, what we mean, what happens. So I coined a phrase about changing the world by one opportunity at a time, and I've got a motto that goes on my Twitter and my LinkedIn and everything else like that. And I'd encourage everybody to read that, because that's what I truly believe. It's a long way of answering a question, but it's a way of giving back and making the largest impact possible.
Saf, in terms of your giving back, how do you decide who you want to give your time and support to?
I mean, I answer that question on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn talks about causes, and it's got a long list of causes, and I put down education, health, poverty alleviation was one of the categories. And they were my things in terms of the top thing. And I know other people have got animals and various other things and so forth. And from my perspective, everybody's there doing the right thing and for themselves. And people have certain causes that mean that they feel a little bit closer to. Sports is something that we're supporting and sponsoring. Anything to do with education, particularly lifelong learning, adult education, getting people out of that poverty trap. It's a big thing in terms of in-work poverty. So there's people who are in the workplace working, but they can't seem to get out of that situation where they can get onto that career ladder. So that's a big thing for us in terms of in-work poverty.
And if I can come in there, I mean, this year is 2022, and it is the golden opportunity for Birmingham. Billions of people will be looking at us, looking at the successes of the Commonwealth Games, look at the successes of what's happening. The city is incredible. There's billions of pounds being invested in the city and the street, and sort of politicians and some of the business leaders are doing a fabulous job. But actually, look at the underbelly of the city. Over 40% of our children are below the poverty line. We've got a lot to do. We need to make a difference. Safaraz is quite right talking about education and things like that. Lifting people out of poverty is around education and is around opportunities.
That's an interesting point about the Commonwealth Games. You obviously you see that as being a great plus for the city. Some people see it as a bit of a vanity project and see it in terms of, we've got a city that's got a vibrant beating heart, but the suburbs, if you go into many of the suburbs, they're in terminal decline. So that's an interesting point. Do you think, Saf, that motivation, how important is motivation in terms of why people support good causes? I'm thinking in terms of, some people support good causes because they think they should and it's the right thing to do. And let's be perfectly honest, some people support good causes and give to charity because they see it as a way of promoting themselves, and perhaps there's nothing wrong with that. If they're doing the right thing, then maybe that's okay. But in motivation, how important is that for you?
On a personal level, giving back and charity is part of our religion, the Islamic faith. So we're prescribed in some aspects 2.5% of our wealth is it goes to charities, and the facts are there that the Muslim community is big in terms of giving back. You've also got the Sikh community who are well known in terms of pushing themselves out there, particularly whenever there's there's an issue or there's a concern, they're out there in force in terms of giving back. Feeding the homeless is something that both communities are doing on their own back. And what you find is that in some cases it's small groups of people collectively. It's not even a charity. It's sometimes individuals coming together, setting up an organisation, and they're doing that continuously. And when somebody's doing that consistently, day in, day out, 5 days a week, 7 days a week, it's not about branding and so forth. It is about a lifetime commitment, and people really get commit to these causes. Yes, there's individuals out there who might see it as a branding opportunity, or they might see it as that, and I would encourage that as well, because every penny counts, and it does make a difference. And people have their own perspective of things. I wouldn't necessarily judge anybody in terms of what their reasons are. You just look at the result that they do, the impact that they do, and you try and encourage everybody in any way they can.
I think for me, we can draw on certain religious connotations and things like that. All religions have a mindset of giving back and things like that. You mentioned the Sikhs. You look at the Gurdwara on the Soho Road. I visited there a couple of weeks ago, and I had the privilege of spending time with Boys Saturday. Amrik Singh is particularly close to me. They give away 25,000 meals a week and never tell anybody about anything. It's their Sikhism that they keep things close to the chest. I think for me, when you ask the question about why giving back, why do that, some people do it for profile. They do switch that button. I'm going to now do something for recognition to give back. The recognition's fine. The giving back, I think the way that I would answer this, people talk to me about being a prolific networker and things like that. Your networking skills are really good. You don't turn it on and off. Networking is a lifestyle, as is giving back. Yeah. Giving back is a lifestyle. You don't turn it on, turn it off. You continually do that. From opening the door to somebody who walks in, that's a gesture. That's giving something, to putting some money in somebody's pocket, to feeding somebody, to raising some money, creating an initiative, supporting a charity, taking a responsibility, under the charities commission or anything like that. It is giving back.
It's a way of, appreciating what you've got. appreciating the fact that we're very grateful, and we're very thankful in terms of where we are in life, and the fact that we've got a roof over our heads, and the fact that we've got food and so forth. These are we're very privileged, and we take it as granted, and it's something that when you really look at it in terms of the world economy as a whole and the world population as a whole, we're very lucky to be here, and we're very lucky to live the lives that we are living.
It's a privileged position in society. During lockdown, you talked about Alpha Charity. We won't go too much into the initiative, but it was around 250 dignitaries from the city coming forward to sign a print. Safaraz supported me on that. 250 people during lockdown, during isolation periods and everything else like that. You reach out to them, and having a position in society where they go, okay, no problem. Where do you want me? How do we do this? Without question. So it's occupying a position where you can mobilise people and you can mobilise support. You don't need to be there. Just giving a small amount of support every day is the way ahead.
Everybody has a role. It's some people are at the front line. They've got the ideas. They're leading from the front, like Paul often does. There's other people who can contribute in their own way, even if it's a small way in terms of sharing a post or liking a post, a small monetary contribution, sharing with friends. Whichever way, we can all be generous in terms of some aspects of it, and being even if it's positivity in terms of encouragement. That's a big thing on its own as well.
What would both of you say to those who would say that, charitable giving is all very well and the intention is fine, but actually it does a disbenefit because it lets the state off the hook? I mean, should we really be making sure that children have got food in their bellies because people donate to food banks? Should that not be a responsibility of the state? Should not providing decent end-of-life care for children and other people in the hospices, shouldn't that be about the state and not about the fact that people go around shaking tins? What do you think?
I think from my perspective, there's a place for everything. I think the state can't do everything. We already know that the government, is quite large in itself in terms of how much revenue they collect. It's still not enough, and it's got to come from somewhere. And where you've got charities who sort of laser focus in a particular area, that make the biggest impact because they're closer to it. And government itself has been shrinking because we need to get best value for money, and it's not a way which works in the long run. And yes, the government's there. It has a support line. It's there in terms of certain aspects of it. You've got your education. You've got your obviously your sort of health and well-being. All of those sort of things, government has absolute role. But in some parts of it, in terms of we mentioned a number of times Acorns as a charity, they're at the front line. They're doing the work. It's a hospice. Yes, the NHS could pick it up, but NHS can't pick up everything as well. And the support that they're able to do, being closer to it, the value add that they're able to do, it's just a different way. And it's not one or the other. You can be in a position where both can work and both can play to their strengths. People want to see the impact. When you pay into the government in terms of charities, you don't always see where the money's going, and that's a big issue for people. So they're more willing to pay because it's a choice thing, and people want to have more choice. They want to have more control, and they want to see the results and the impact of their hard-earned cash.
Paul, you one of the charities that I know you do a lot of work with is St Basil's, which is a wonderful charity, but the fact that people are not sleeping under a bridge in a cardboard box, should that really be down to charity? I mean, isn't that something that is bigger than a charity? And doesn't government have a responsibility to make sure that people have got roofs over their heads? And doesn't the fact that charities sort of do that or try to do that, doesn't that kind of let the government off the hook, do you think?
You seem to be gearing up towards the government and things like that. Society itself, government-led, has a responsibility and does go so far to do things like that. But literally, what Safaraz says, hyper-local issues, relationships break down, sons, daughters fall out with families and are extra-sized, move and are forced out of the family home and things like that. There's mechanisms in place for temporary hostels and things like that. But you talk about homeless people. Birmingham's done a fantastic job over the last couple of years to resolve the homeless situation. We're down to like 10 or so people that are living on the streets. And let's be honest, some of those people do not want to be, put into accommodation and things like that. For whatever reason, they decide to live on the streets, which is fine. But we have thousands, something in the region of 3,500 family units that are in temporary accommodation. And that doesn't include people that are sofa surfing and things like that, where sometimes there's thousands of those. So young, vulnerable people that are taken in by St Basil's and guided and things like that, quite often have complex issues. Everybody's different as to why they end up in that situation. We talk about being away, 2 or 3 pay packets away from being homeless and things like that. So any one of us at some point, for whatever reason, to that. You also talk about, St Basil is a wonderful charity, and it's noted that it's 50 years old this year. Hundreds of people have gone through there and made a real good success of their life. It's a fabulous Birmingham charity that has actually got a wider footprint than you think. It's going across all of the Midlands, from Oxford all the way up to Wolverhampton.
And it comes back, I suppose, to the question that we started with, which was, there are so many good causes, homelessness, health causes, addiction, domestic abuse, all of that kind of thing. And it must be so difficult for people like yourself, Saf, and yourself, Paul, to have to say, well, my time is finite, because time is finite. So you can't support everybody. I don't know if you're both familiar with Desert Island Disc, which is a programme on BBC Radio 4, which has been going for a lot of years.
That was way before my time.
Way before your time. Well before your time. So anyway, let me stop waffling. Every guest on Desert Island Disc is allowed to choose 8 discs, and at the end the presenter says, if you're on Desert Island and there's a storm and they're all going to get washed away and you can save one of them, what would it be? So of all the charities that both of you are involved with and a support, this is a real curveball, but you could only support one of them. Which one would it be?
I wouldn't name a charity because I'm involved in a number of charities. I think it was 7 or 8 different charities. If I could save one charity, what would I do? I would look at vulnerable children who can't support themselves, who need support, be it through society, be it through medical conditions, be it family, or be it financial conditions. So I would always favour supporting children.
So?
Very similar. You look at the biggest impact in terms of that, and education, vulnerability, health. Those are those are the areas which are core to me as well. Education as per se can probably make the biggest impact. You can change a whole generation, through education, and it's probably the thing that has the biggest impact as well. So yeah, absolutely.
All right. So you don't want to choose, and that's fair enough.
Yeah.
We've looked back, but let's sort of spend the last few minutes of this broadcast looking forward. What are your plans for 2022, Paul, in terms of supporting good causes and all the rest of it?
I wrote a list. Goals for 2022, not specific business, just generally things around that. 2 or 3 things were around businesses and things like that, but you get round to number 3 on the list, and it was to collectively raise £500,000 for charitable monies, and that's through longevity, setting up activities and things like that, and they'll repeat. So I personally put forward, and I'm not going to raise every penny, but I'm going to manage to pull in £500,000. I'm going to put 10,000 people into jobs. I'm going to put 20,000 courses delivered. We're getting new qualifications for people starting out lifelong learning. I'm going to look at people with opportunities for students and things like that, work placements. Work placements for me start at school, goes into students, so further education, higher education, but it also goes into adults. You know, I'd challenge you, when you've got a week's holiday, why don't you do work placement? Go do something else. You know, have a look at something else like that. So to be able to do that, so I suggested that I would put my name to 1,000 work placements, be through universities and to that. So my whole list is there, and it talks about guiding BYSA through its 20th year, supporting St Basil's on its 50th year, talking about Better Pathways on its 70th year next year. And it talks about the things that I'm going to look forward to doing around Steps to Works and Starting Point recruitment. Those are my rough guides, and I sat and wrote those a few weeks before the year started.
And as Bromley of the Early, with an accolade that you got last year, I mean, are most of your charitable work connected with charities that are local in the Birmingham area, or do you do national as well?
So I've done some things internationally, but I've got to... the big drive for me is Wassell. So it was Walsall against single-use plastic, working with Rashid Gatrad, who's an absolute inspiration. He's a dynamo. He's about in his 70s. He's got more get up and go than me, the majority of people. That was Walsall against single-use plastic. It's now World against single-use plastic, and we're represented in 17 countries now. So that's my international reach around environmental changes for good, education and things like that. So I have got international reach, but very much focused on the educational point and everything else like that in the UK. But some of the platforms, some of the things we've got can go across international. So I'm very keen on supporting people in India, lifting poverty, lifting education across India, Pakistan, and looking at South America, and we're looking at the Caribbean and things like that. Opportunities around education for that point.
Saf, what have you got in mind for the coming year?
You know that I went to Kashmir and Pakistan in the period of December, and one of the things that if you are following me on social media, you'll see the fact that I visited 6 charities there, all doing different things. Muslim Hands was one of them. Kashmir Orphan Relief Trust was another one. I actually wanted to see firsthand the impact that they're doing. And some of these charities, particularly in the month of Ramadan, are all over the media and so forth, and they're constantly continuously on our Google ads and so forth. And I thought to myself, yes, I recognise the name, but let me see firsthand the operation, what they're doing and so forth. And I was very impressed with that. So that's something that I committed to, myself, my family committed to in December while we were there. In terms of the organisation, Pathway Group, we've got, we're committed to the United Nations global goals, so Sustainable Development Goals. So we've got certain targets in terms of environmental, certain targets in terms of buying locally, certain targets also in terms of our staff giving back. So, we talk about business in the community. So we want to encourage, like Paul said, our staff to give, maybe at least start off with giving a day back or getting involved with charities or organisations. So we're encouraging them to, sit on sort of committees, go out there and raise, and even if it's an element of for their birthday, to nominate a charity as a starting point. So, so there's a whole sort of plan that we've got from a business perspective and from a personal perspective, and, from my family, we've made a commitment to some causes, but at the same time, the causes that we've already been, working with to continue to support in any way we can. So the Birmingham Youth Sports Academy, the JABS Academy, a number of educational trusts, a number of homeless trusts that we're supporting. So carry on with those, but actually doing more and encouraging others as well to pick this up and make that your passion.
Finally, what would you both say to somebody who's thinking, well, I wouldn't mind giving a bit of time to charity? Why should I do it? I mean, I guess you might be saying you might be giving, but you'll also get a lot back as well. Is that fair in terms of, if you support a charity, you're picking up skills, you're meeting people and all the rest of it. So it's not just a one-way street, is it, Paul?
When we started ambassadors, Acorns ambassadors, and we've started business club, you pay £10 a month for the business club. You're invited to be an ambassador and things like that. I always say it's a two-way street. It's reciprocal. You must make gain And from that, and you talk about the feel-good factor of doing the right things for the right reasons, back to the community of giving, charitable mindsets comes together, and they support the charity and they support their peers. So you'll gain interest, business opportunities out of giving back in charity. Some of the major things that's happened to me in business is because of my profile and my connections to charity, and it's critically important that is be that nice go-to person that's trusted, that can deliver for you. And a lot of people in charity sit into that frame.
I mean, I used to have a sort of an outlook to say, if only volunteers are people who are sort of in their retirement, because that's an element of them giving back, or volunteers are people who are early in their career, and that's adding to the CV. But it's much more than that. The community, the impact that you have, and it's all about partly being involved with different aspects of it and broadening your own horizons and opening your own mind and seeing the fact that there's a world out there and you yourself can make a difference.
Paul, you've given your time to us today, and we're incredibly grateful for that, because we know you're a busy man.
Yes.
Saf and Paul, tremendous insight, and I hope that our listeners have got some thoughts about how they might be able to support good causes. And unfortunately, time has beaten us, as it always does. We're going to bring this Canny conversation with a cause to a close. We're going to hope that you enjoyed listening. We really do value your feedback. And if you feel you want to like or subscribe, then that would be wonderful. But until the next time, goodbye.